Dr. Tim Campbell, and Tim is the director of the St. Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick. You're very welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, it's not the day or yesterday that I visited you in Downpatrick to do a couple of nationwides for RTE. Really enjoyed being there. It's a lovely centre you've got there.
Thank you. Yes, we've been going now for quite a time, for about 12 years.
Yes.
We, as you know, we're the only permanent exhibition in the world about St. Patrick, and it's becoming very popular always at this time of the year.
Of course, and you're there based in the Coyle estuary in the Great River Coyle, heading up towards the land of Lecal.
That's right.
You're up in Ardglassway. You're actually on the cusp of historical magnificence.
That's right.
You're surrounded by wonderment.
And we're on St. Patrick's Trail, which is this new driving route that goes from Armagh through Newry.
Yeah.
Perhaps your viewers will see the trail as you drive along. It's got these brown signs.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a 92-mile driving trail which takes you from Armagh through Newry, through Downpatrick and all the way up to Bangor. So you can follow in the trail of St. Patrick all the way across Armagh and down.
And you know, it's really so good because his message went out with the missionaries out of Bangor and went on further north off to the Isles, up the road to the Isles, the channel going north. And then there's evidence of him in the little church on Rathlin Island as well. Not him, but of the monks from Bangor who went out, and they settled on Rathlin Island for a time. Yeah. But the Patrick thing, he's done us proud. Tourism should knight him or something, because tourism would be nothing at this time of year without him.
Well, around this time of the year, 6.5 million people all over the world, in every city in the world, will be getting onto their feet to celebrate the history and the heritage of this little part of Ireland, even though they don't really know much about the story of Patrick or the story of this part of Ireland. That's actually what they're celebrating. So we need them to think about us, think about South Down and Armagh at this time of the year, and encourage them to know more about Newry and Downpatrick and Armagh as a tourist destination.
And that simply means that you start putting your dollars and your shekels and whatever money you have away, wherever you are viewing in the world at this time, and come home to us next year. Make it our own sort of Newry and Mourne homecoming. We'd be there. And it's North Down as well. Your area is North Down?
Well, funny enough, I live in North Down, yes. I actually live in Bangor, so we've got the whole thing covered between one part and another. But as you say, saints and scholars, people think whenever they come to Ireland, it's all about the land of saints and scholars. But it's important to remember St. Patrick and come north.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And we're facilitating that constantly now. There's word of a new ferry across Carlingford Lough to take people from Greenore across to Greencastle and then onward into the hinterland of wonderment. The Patrick thing, are we building him up more than he was? Was he just an ordinary minstrel, an ordinary wandering preacher? Was he simply an ordinary guy, and that we have bestowed upon him all of this excellence? Or what was he?
Well, he was someone who was actually very influential, very important, very charismatic. He came to Ireland, to the northern part of Ireland where there weren't any Christian people, and he converted, in his own words, tens of thousands of people.
Wow.
He was someone who, if we think of Ireland, as I mentioned, as the land of saints and scholars, the history of Ireland, history is where you write things down, archaeology is where you dig stuff up. Well, the history of Ireland, the first words begin with Patrick. So he's important for a written heritage as well as for the religious aspect.
Yeah.
But he's someone who had been abducted. It's a great story of slavery, of pirates, of redemption, of finding his faith, of converting people. And then there's a sub-story behind that. There's another plot. The reason we know about him is that the people who sent him here in the first place thought he was getting a bit beyond himself. He was calling himself the Bishop of Ireland. Where was all the money if he's founding all these churches? Yeah. So they come up with the story to try and frame him, to bring him home. So, you know, there's a lot of everything from slavery to to Patrick and his mission. It's all there. It's a great story.
Yeah. And you know, he's Welsh. Is he a Welshman?
Well, the people from Wales like to think so.
Yeah, but he's not. What is he?
Well, he came from a place...
Roman?
Yes, he's Roman Britain, but he came from a place called Banataburnia. We're not entirely sure where that is. Could have been the southern part of Wales, perhaps the southwestern part of Britain. But his father was a cleric, his grandfather was a cleric, and he was
born to the cloth.
He was born to the cloth, yes,
Goodness
but he was
gracious.
16 and he wasn't terribly keen on all that.
No, you wouldn't have been at 16.
No, if he'd had an iPod, he'd have had those things shoved in his ears and the volume turned up.
Yeah.
And then the Irish came and abducted him when he was 16. And of course, back in those days, it wasn't really the Irish who came. It was people called the Scotti.
The Scotti.
The Scotti.
Yes.
Well, we are the Scotti or the Scots.
Yes.
And we live in Hibernia, although now it's called Ireland.
Yeah.
And the reason Scotland is called Scotland, of course, is because we invaded it and renamed it after ourselves. So it's a complicated picture, but he was abducted and brought here whenever he was 16. 6 years a shepherd slave on Slieve-Mish, or as we know it now, Slemish Mountain.
Wow.
Starts to find his faith, and then eventually he believes God tells him to run away, and he runs 200 miles. He must have come through Newry on his way.
There you are.
Yeah, come through Newry, definitely.
Yeah.
And hopefully he got some help on the way through.
Oh, I think I'd be very surprised if you did. No, they're a funny sort in Newry, I tell you.
Of course, in those days there was no motorway.
No,
so
indeed.
you know the safest way to travel was by sea. So he would have had, as an escaped slave, he would have had to have wandered through a patchwork quilt of petty kingdoms to try and make his way to safety. And eventually he met some sailors, and they got him off the island of Ireland.
And he went back to Wales?
He seems to have gone back. He does say that he went back to be with his people again.
Yeah.
And then he because of his experience, he converted the sailors.
Yeah.
And eventually he comes back to home. Because of his experience, he's found his faith. He decides he's going to become a cleric.
Yes. Taken after the parent, the father.
Taking after the father.
But I mean,
and the
it's interesting
grandfather.
that the notion of St. Patrick, who brought the message of Christ to the land, that he was born of a cleric father, that our artificial notion of priestly celibacy wasn't born then.
Yes, that's true.
So people could do what God meant them to do.
Yes,
They could copulate and procreate, and thus came Patrick. And goodness gracious, and he obviously went off to study somewhere.
There's discussion about where he went to study. Some people think that he studied in the northern part of France. Other people think he may have studied in Britain, perhaps both. He does. The only geographical reference he makes about Europe is that he said he would like to be with his brothers in Christ in Gaul. So there does seem to be a relationship, some sort of in the northern part of France.
France would be a thing there. But I mean, if they thought, who is this guy? But first of all, he was a young bishop.
Yeah.
And they're saying, who does he think he is? He's a big fellow. What if he's a bishop? He's the Bishop of Ireland. He suddenly developed a huge confidence to be making these claims.
Yes, he does seem to be very charismatic, have a great faith in himself. He believes that when he slept one night, he became a bishop whenever he was a cleric, and then he was allowed to come to Ireland as a missionary, not as a bishop of Ireland, but as a missionary.
A missionary, yeah.
So his missionary endeavour was in the northern part, and the reason he came here, and he describes it himself, he said, I came to you to bring Christ to you to the end of the earth beyond which there is nothing. I love to tell our American friends that. It's the end of the earth. This is it. You know, when you get to the Giant's Causeway or Donegal, that's it. It's not going. So the furthest part away from civilization in Europe was Ireland. Even the Romans didn't come here.
Or Innisfail Island.
And if you go north on that island, you're even more remote.
Yeah.
So he wasn't the first bishop to Ireland. There was another one supposedly in the southernmost parts.
Did they have a row or something? Was there? No, I'm not sure. No, maybe not.
Well, Palladius is someone who seems to have disappeared off the radar. He came, according to the papal archives, he was a troubleshooter for Pope Celestine. He was a troubleshooter for Rome.
An early mafia boss.
Well, I don't
so
know.
To speak.
I don't know about the mafia, but certainly he helped in the northern part of France.
Yeah.
And then he was asked to come to Ireland because the Irish asked to have a bishop, probably in the southernmost part. So by the time of Patrick, a year or two later, he was sent to the northern part.
Yes.
And this was the wildest and the woolliest, of course. Yes. But he had experience here because he had been a slave.
Yes, of course. And would he ever have taken himself further south and met up with the high kings of Ireland down in Tara and things like that?
Well, there the legends and the myths, and they call it hagiography, where you write about the legends of saints. The later writers join the dots. I always tell people Patrick wore out many more pairs of sandals in death than he did in life. He couldn't possibly have visited all these places.
But presumably he might have had to have gone to the palace of the High King and presented his credentials.
You would have thought so. The northern half of Ireland seems to have been his domain, and certainly those dots were filled in by the later writers. And there probably is some truth in the later writings about Patrick meeting the High King in Tara and setting the Paschal fire in Slane.
Yes, of course. Now, the Ireland he came to was, from a Christian perspective, quite primitive. There's very little there. What was it like at the time of his leaving? How good a job did he do?
The archaeology over Patrick's time is very scarce. What we do find is that whenever he came, there were very few people who believed in Christianity. He talks about baptizing tens of thousands of people. And I'm very pleased to say that women play an important part in his ministry, which can't be said for some of our later Irish saints.
Indeed.
But he was by the time he left, there were thousands of people who believed in Christianity. He had created churches, most particularly in Armagh, and it continues to be both within...
It's absolutely all traditions.
All traditions, yes.
And you see, maybe Bridget came later, did she not? I think.
Yes.
I think
she
so.
did, yes.
She did. So he was actually in giving recognition to women as those who helped with baptism and baptized. He was giving them the opportunity to come forward and creating the milieu whence came Bridget.
That's correct.
At another time.
And of course, we've got a great rhyme in Downpatrick because the three saints are traditionally buried with us. We say that in Down one grave 3 saints do fill, Patrick, Bridget, and Columkill. So Bridget, of course, associated with Dublin, Columkill more associated with bringing Christianity to Scotland, and Patrick coming from Britain to be the patron saint of Ireland. So we have the 3 saints traditionally all buried there.
Yeah. Do the people who come, you mentioned the Americans earlier, do they come to you in their droves, the Americans, or not?
It is becoming an important place to visit, yes. I mean, obviously, the Titanic Centre has just had 1 million people coming this year. A lot of people go there. It's good as a beacon to bring people to the northern part of Ireland.
Of course, of course.
So we encourage them, there are 5 signature projects, and we encourage them to take a right through the mountains of Mourne when they come into Newry.
Yes.
And come and visit St. Patrick's Country on the way up. And there's so many things to see. We've got the first church in Ireland at Saul, the first healing wells at Struel. You've got the place where the legend of the snakes was written at Inshabby.
Yes.
You've got the medieval cathedral, which is now, over the St. Patrick's period, we've lit the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church, the cathedral, and the St. Patrick's Centre. We've all gone green for St. Patrick's period because Tourism Ireland have this programme, the Pyramids of Giza. They've got the suspension bridge over in America,
San Francisco.
And San Francisco, yes. All the the Empire State Building, everywhere's going green. The most famous landmarks.
My goodness,
so we thought we would steal a march on them as the home of St. Patrick.
Listen, is the home of St. Patrick going out to America? Are you visiting and lecturing in America and saying this is what we've got? Come and see it.
Well, we have created an organisation called the Friends of St. Patrick, of people who've come to our part of the world, become inspired by what we do, because we do a lot of reconciliation work as well. So as well as looking at St. Patrick as being a historical figure who can encourage tourism, he also has the capacity to bring people together. So we tend to work in what we call the spirit of St. Patrick here.
Well, tell me more about it. You use a word that's foreign to us in this part of the world, or so it seems. Reconciliation.
Yes, reconciliation.
It's not just about candy floss.
No, Patrick can be an active way of bringing people together. So, for example, in our St. Patrick's Day parade in Downpatrick, we have a cross-community carnival parade. It happens also in Newry. It happens in Armagh. And we're trying to take kind of the politics out of the day and allow it to be a day to bring people together. In the St. Patrick's Centre, we've got an important education programme where we bring young people from all traditions together. What better role model for the future than someone from Britain who became the patron saint of Ireland? You can't get any more cross-community than that. Yeah. But you're asking me about abroad.
Yeah.
What we do abroad is we have a number of Friends chapters who support the centre. They want to learn more about this part of Ireland. We send representatives from here over there. They lecture from all different traditions.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and they bring young people every year. It's called our Young Ambassador Programme.
Yes.
They bring them from America over to this part of Ireland. And we have them for 2 weeks and we show them our different traditions. They go back and they lecture about that. But around St. Patrick's Day, Whereas the spirit of St. Patrick here is about reconciliation. In America, it tends to be more about helping people who are less fortunate.
Really? And that is a solid raison d'etre for the followers of Patrick, the
Yes.
modern day followers of
I
Patrick.
think so. We're starting a whole movement
My
doing
goodness.
this. You know, so
And you're starting this.
yes, we're starting this from County Down.
This is huge news. This is beautiful news. You're not proselytizing for Christianity, but you're giving expression to the real meaning of Christianity, that people look after the less fortunate.
Yes.
You know, the bag woman in New York could be helped
Exactly.
as a consequence of Patrick.
Yes.
Goodness
And should
gracious.
be, because you see, whenever we listen to
is
people,
wonderful.
and whenever we hear that, we talk to people and say, how did you come to be here? They say, well, we're very proud of our Irish roots. But a lot of the reason that they're there in the first place is because of homelessness or hunger.
Yes.
So I say, how do you celebrate St. Patrick's Day? You know, the thought is, why would you march past people who are hungry or homeless on St. Patrick's Day if the reason that you're there in the first place is because of homelessness and hunger? So we work with a number of different organizations in America. In the Midwest, we work with an organization called Hunger Task Force. And as part of the parade, our people will go behind the big truck, and people now know to bring food and money to the parade, and we collect that for the homeless. We do it in Phoenix, Arizona. We do it in Tampa. They call themselves the Green Army down there. We're getting together with the Salvation Army. We do it we're starting it in New York as well. Cardinal Timothy Dolan is a friend of ours.
This is all happening
This
from
year.
the hub
Yes,
that
it's
is
coming from
Downpatrick.
It's coming from the home of St. Patrick, yes.
I'm speechless.
Yeah. And just this year, we want young people over there to learn about our part of Ireland. And what we do is we have created an education book, which is now going out just as we speak to every school in the Archdiocese of New York. Hundreds of schools, thousands of school children will be able to learn about the story of St. Patrick and tie it back to County Down.
And also, the charitable outreach that you're talking about, that won't simply stop at the end of St. Patrick's Day. That's something that'll go on.
It is
in the nature of people to do that.
Yes, it is. And I think it's time to give back. It's time to reassess St. Patrick's Day. Of those 6.5 million people who are celebrating, if everybody brought a can of food for people who are less fortunate, or put a couple of dollars into the bucket,
My goodness.
then we could do a huge amount of work and a huge amount of good every year in the spirit of St. Patrick.
Dr. Tim Campbell, it doesn't get any better than that, and that's where we're going to leave it. Because
Lovely.
I want to leave on that
Thank
great
you.
high point.
Thank you.
It's huge. Thank you so very much indeed for what you're doing. Well done. An amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. An element of the St. Patrick story that's new to me, and I suspect new to many of you out there. Wherever you are in the world, do enjoy your St. Patrick's Day and try to make it back to Downpatrick, back to this land of Patrick in the time to come. Well done, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.